Health and Wellbeing at Work 2026. That's a mouthful. Working Wellbeing's podcast, even more to say. First episode of the day, and
Wow.
I'm super excited because we've never actually met in
No,
person before.
no, we haven't, Matt. No.
But we have Elliot Foster with us today. So, Elliot, do you want to say hi? Introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Matt. My name's Elliot Foster, head of Wellbeing Strategy at a workplace wellbeing consultancy called SuperWellness. Business psychologist by background, so very much how do we use workplace wellbeing as a driver for good business performance.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could go on forever, but I think that's enough.
I can ask you more about that as we go through. I know I'm a business psychologist as well, so we can talk a little bit about that today. And also, I said first time in person, but I know you from absolutely dominating LinkedIn, right? You can't switch LinkedIn on without seeing your face, which is good.
That's what I should have said. My job title is key content creator for LinkedIn. I actually don't work for SuperWellness. It's just LinkedIn.
Just LinkedIn. Yeah. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it not easy, but I'm not sitting there for days trying to think of content
Yeah.
because that's when it can just take over your life. And I'm not doing it to try and sell things. I feel like I do it to try and help raise awareness or educate. And because we know that people working in-house, they don't have the time quite often to do a lot of the research. So how do they have the opportunity to look at what's new, what papers are being said, or what's happening in the health and safety executive or anything out there beyond what's in their bubble because they're so busy.
Yeah. I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I tend to go up and down. So I have a really good couple of weeks where I'm like on it and posting content and hopefully interesting takes. And then it kind of gets on top of you. But it's about reframing it, I think, as you say, just do it for the enjoyment rather
So
than...
one of the things that I actually found was the best thing for me is when I started the workplace wellbeing jobs posts every Thursday. So seeing what workplace wellbeing jobs out there in the UK, post them every Thursday, it got me a bit of kind of, I'm not doing it to sell anything. I'm doing it to bring the community together so they can realize and that's kind of, that fills one of the days up really easily.
Yeah. I love the job posts because I absolutely do not want a job. But when I see your post, I'm always clicking on it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's really interesting because obviously I read all the job specs.
Yeah.
Not really massively in detail, but I kind of vet them to see what are they expecting, what's the pay like, are they showing pay, which because I put that on the post itself, but really just to see what the landscape of the profession is and it's peaks and troughs. Like last week we had 10 new roles come up. This week I've only got a couple in the line, but they might come up over the next couple of days. So it's good to keep abreast even when you're not looking for new roles.
Yeah.
What the possibilities and what organizations are going to be taking it more seriously. Because funnily enough, you can see how seriously an organization takes workplace wellbeing from what they're saying in their job spec. I've seen some shockers.
Yeah. What's the worst?
I won't name them, but last year there was an organization that was looking for an inclusion and wellbeing lead, develop, launch a strategy, and they were going to pay them £29,000.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's the expectation of, okay, well, you're not going to get anyone who's done it before for that level. And also both inclusion and wellbeing strategy as a oneer.
Yeah.
Yes, it does work, but you need a team below you to help you with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. The breadth of some of these roles as well. We need you to have NEBOSH and also a business psychology master's and also be, 10 years in HR. It's all the breadth that they're looking for in some of these roles.
So much they don't actually know what they're looking for. That's one of the issues. They know they need someone, but they don't know. Because, and this is a kind of a side point, because of the lack of governing body or whatever, and I know you've talked a lot about this already, organizations don't know what they need.
Yeah.
So they just kind of go, let's give it a go. See where we get.
Yeah, I've got you. I've got loads of questions I want to ask you. I'm trying to think, which do I go for first? You mentioned the governing body.
Yes.
So have you got a take on that? Do you feel we need more professional standards in the governing body?
So I always say that workplace wellbeing is a fantastic role to get into, profession to get into, because it's open to everyone. The problem is with it is that it's open to everyone. And I love the accessibility of it. I was speaking to someone earlier on the stand that had come back after maternity leave, gone into kind of an office admin, PA role, and she'd kind of created her own health and wellbeing advisor role. Off the back of it, fantastic, not expecting any qualifications. What I would say is that there needs to be some sort of guidance in terms of what works and what doesn't, because there is a lot of, particularly post-pandemic, not noise, but there was no real guidance on what works and what doesn't. So people just kind of chuck money at stuff in organizations And when it didn't work, organizations then went, oh, workplace wellbeing doesn't work in our organization. We'll scrap the role. We won't do anything. And actually, it's not the workplace wellbeing doesn't work in their organization. It's just that what they were focusing on probably wasn't the right intervention for what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if they're trying to create a cultural shift, having one or two webinars over awareness days isn't going to cut the mustard. It's about what are you trying to get from it. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's a big mismatch there that hopefully kind of guidance,
Mm.
whether that's a governing body or whoever,
Yeah.
would help with.
Mm. Have you got a take in terms of where well-being should sit in an organization? Is it the remit of health and safety or HR? Should it be its own concern?
So,
Should it be everybody's job?
so that's the common one, isn't it? So what I would say is that I don't think it necessarily matters where it sits. What matters is that you don't work in silo.
Mm.
I see, and it's getting better now, but you see so many health and wellbeing professionals, workplace wellbeing professionals working by themselves. And then you talk to them about the preventative stuff.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, well, I don't have remit over that.
Mhm.
It's absolutely fine. You don't expect one person to do everything. They
Yeah.
don't expect that from health and safety, occupational health. You need to be working with key stakeholders in your organization and work in partnership. So I don't think it matters if it sits in occupational health, HR, uh, wherever it might, health and safety. One place I don't think it should sit is comms,
Okay.
because from my experience and what I see is that it does become a share information job,
Mm.
and that's kind of where it ends.
Yeah.
And if we want to kind of become more mature in the UK around psychosocial risk, etc., I don't think comms is the best place for it.
Okay.
The others have pros and cons, but it really does depend on the organization, which is a bit of a cop out answer, I know.
No,
But
no, and how they're supported as an
yes,
individual and the
yeah,
stakeholders they can interact with.
yeah,
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
yeah,
So one of the things that I found really interesting, this is going back probably a couple of years, is you obviously do the jobs, and it seems like one of the things that you've done is have a look at all those job descriptions and created a bit of a map for the
yeah,
profession. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So this would have been in November 2024. So kind of off the back of that guidance, there was very little there on what it meant to be a workplace wellbeing professional. So what we did, I looked at job specs, I looked at job ads. So I reached out to people that in the community and had a look at that,
Yeah.
and did a bit of a thematic analysis, if
Mm.
that's the right term, um, and looked at what are the key skills, knowledge, competencies that were expected there. Then we created the workplace wellbeing profession map off the back
Yeah.
of it, and created a free self-assessment tool. So it was really kind of useful. And one of the reasons why we developed it was because I wanted to develop a couple of courses
Mm.
and didn't just want to say, I think this is what needs to be in it. Actually, what are organizations looking for? What is the evidence saying
Yeah.
it looks for? So that was back in October 2024. And I think was one of the first in the UK to give that guidance a little bit. But I know there's more gone on since then
No,
with
it's
Affinity
interesting.
Health at Work, and
Yeah.
the framework that we developed fed into as a piece of evidence for that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and we did something similar. We did it based on the podcast actually.
yeah.
So we looked at there was about 25 people we spoke to who were doing the job on the podcast. So we analysed that and yeah, got my geek hat on as well. And what are the themes that are coming out of that was pre-AI. I could have got AI to do it
I
for me,
know,
but
I
you know.
know the amount of time that I looked at the themes.
Yeah,
God.
yeah. So are there any, if you think about that profession map, are there any attributes in there that you think particularly stand out that a well-being leader needs to have?
I think the stakeholder engagement
Hmm.
is so underlooked, but so key. As I said, you
Yeah.
can't be successful, or it's very unlikely to be successful in an organization and workplace well-being if you work in silo. So how would you work and engage with senior leaders,
Yeah.
managers, occupational health professionals, health and safety, some of which might have that negative perception of well-being,
Mm.
that it's nice to have, it's fluffy.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of win them over
Yeah.
and get them to kind of help us? And a lot of that is by understanding, well, what are they trying to achieve? What's
Love
the
that.
business trying to achieve?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ones that's most underlooked. But if you look at the workplace wellbeing professionals that you say are most successful,
Mm.
it's having those internal relationships and being able to build them.
Yeah.
For me, is
Yeah.
absolutely key.
Yeah, we interviewed a guy on the podcast, guy called Chris Jones. It was really
Mm.
I love the episode, and he's the, I'm gonna get this right, chief health safety and well-being
Mm.
officer for an
Yeah.
organization over in New Zealand. Actually,
Oh, okay.
we asked him about what he thought the most important attributes were, and essentially it was that he said, I need to know what the COO does. I need to know what the, what the the marketing team does. I need to know what sales do. I need, and he said that he's spending as much time learning about their jobs as
Yeah.
he was actually doing his own.
Yeah.
Because if he understood what made them tick and what they were interested in, then well-being's one of these things that, as we know, needs to blend into all of the things that they're
Yeah.
doing. So,
And that's one of the difficult things when workplace wellbeing gets added onto a role often.
mm,
All the time, all that you have time for are some events.
yeah,
Um, so actually you don't have that time for that stakeholder engagement or that wider strategic piece. So
yeah,
it's one of those where you need the role. I got asked the question the other day on an event I was running, and how big a company does it have to become before you have someone looking at
that's
workplace
interesting.
well-being as an individual role? And I didn't have an answer,
Yeah.
but I guess the answer is, well, if you think, because I think in that organization it was split between HR,
Mm,
and my question back to them was, well, how strategic are you being with it?
mm,
Are you just looking at it as an events thing?
yeah,
Because if so, then you probably need to think about, actually that's probably better use of individuals' time,
yeah,
rather than it being split between five. Have one person full time on
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a good take. So you obviously do the job ads, so find the job ads and the
Yeah,
job descriptions. Have you noticed anything in terms of more or less jobs? So you said it
it's
fluctuates a little
very
bit, but
seasonable.
one of the things that we hear quite a lot at the moment is that some bigger jobs have been made redundant more
Yeah,
recently. Is that
yeah.
a theme that you
So
or trend?
it's hard to tell because often, as you'll know, what's the bias that I'm looking at? Do you only see the jobs disappearing because they're the ones that are most kind of the well-known organizations on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
or most well-known names? So yes, you have seen some jobs go. I know, um, uh, obviously BrewDog, obviously with everything that's going on with them, that I know they got rid of their kind of well-being and inclusion partner a few months ago.
Mhm.
I would say I'm seeing just as many jobs. What I do notice that organizations often repost the same job.
Hmm.
Numerous organizations I'll remember, oh, they posted this last year, I wonder
Right.
what's happened.
Ooh.
So whether that's because they didn't find someone, or they found someone it wasn't the right fit, or maybe they found someone it wasn't actually what they were looking for because
Yeah.
they don't know what they're looking for.
Mm.
So in terms of number, I'd say there's the same amount.
Yeah.
Um, but also workplace well-being, it doesn't have to have workplace well-being in the title. I think employee engagement can often feed into it.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes I'll post those types of roles, because when I've looked at it,
Yeah.
it does talk about workplace well-being. So
Yeah.
you've got to be a bit more, uh, not as specific with it
Yeah.
sometimes. But
Got you.
in terms of number, the same.
Yeah, I've got you. That's interesting. That with my business psychology hat on, when you were saying that, I really want to work out what the bounce rate is for these roles.
Yeah,
Like how likely is it that people go into these roles and then bounce straight
yeah.
out?
So
How does that compare to other professions? That would be really
yeah,
interesting,
and
wouldn't it?
one of
There's your PhD. Right
the
there.
yeah, it's strange, and I have a feeling that quite often people will go in with a perception of what a role's going to look like,
Mm,
and actually in that meta that is an organization, it doesn't exist like that. So then they're like, well, this isn't right for me. I'm
yeah,
going to leave. Maybe they go in with real strategic brain and push, and that's what got them into the through the interview, because they like that. But
yeah,
actually, when they get into organizations, it is very much the individual level intervention, a couple of awareness days, maybe mental health first days. I'm not knocking any of that, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not maybe as looking as preventative as they
Mm,
would like to.
yeah,
That's just my perception.
yeah,
I've not got any
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
evidence of feedback on that, but
And maybe the mismatch of expectation as
yes,
well. The
yeah,
expectations you have for yourself as much as
yeah.
anything. Because, the people we speak to, and you'll have spoken to lots of wellbeing leaders, they're so passionate and they
Oh,
want to create change. And it must
absolutely.
be incredibly frustrating when you can't do that overnight or, even in a relatively short time
Yeah,
period. And I
yeah.
wonder whether that mismatch of expectations creates some
We get
frustration
that.
from the
We
individual's part as
so
well.
I get that with especially with people on our level 5 diploma, that
Mm,
they so passionate, as you said,
mm,
they really want to make change, and whether because this change is too slow or they kind of get knocked back,
yeah,
it can put a dent on their confidence in terms of, well, is this the right role for me?
yeah,
And that might be why they move on elsewhere, or they're kind of not doing the strategic work that they want to. So
yeah,
it's a real challenge around how do we educate senior leaders of organizations on what it is that workplace wellbeing professionals should be doing. That's
yeah.
one of the key challenges.
Yeah. I'd say it would be ironic is if the organizations just think that they lack resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Wouldn't
not tough
surprise me.
enough. Do you know what? This is a
Yeah.
true story. I came across an organization recently who wanted to speak to me about resilience,
Mm.
right? And I have a love-hate relationship
Yeah.
with that word, as many people in the profession do. But I wanted to understand it more. So, what do you mean by resilience? And they said, well, we've created this new role. It wasn't a well-being role, actually. It was something completely different. We've created this new role and we've hired 5 people in 12 months who we can't get to stay. So they said, Matt, we need you to find a resilient person for me. And I was like, or the job shit,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
fix the job.
Yeah.
But yeah, the irony of that, I hope none of that's happening in those well-being roles, but almost
Yeah.
inevitably is, right?
Yeah. I think sometimes a lot of them are when they're joined roles, and I think sometimes they expect too much. They're
Yeah.
expecting health and safety, well-being, all to be done to an amazing standard, and just taking health and safety and well-being roles as an example. The stuff that's always going to come first is the legislative stuff, the health and safety stuff. So the well-being stuff can get left to the side
Yeah.
sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think that mismatch of expectation.
Yeah. Would you like to see more legislation in the well-being world?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more on that pushes organizations to do more around prevention. Um,
So would you
obvious-
make it punitive or you make it well, carrot or stick?
well, the problem is we as a profession now very much use the carrot approach,
Mm,
and it doesn't always work. Majority of the time doesn't work,
sure.
especially now economically things are tight. What gets pushed or
Mm,
pulled, nice to have things.
mm,
So how do we get senior leaders convinced? Punitive, the stick approach. Give you an example, what was happening with the health and safety executive around preventing work-related stress with the University of Birmingham and finished in December. I mentioned that to our community back when it first started, and the amount of people that then went to their senior leaders and said, we're not legislatively compliant here, who've since come back to me and said that they've totally put in around stress risk assessments,
yeah.
is an example of how the punitive stuff can the risk of a punitive kind of sanction or fine can in place can work. And Australia do a lot on that. I've heard feedback that it's gone too far, that
Mm,
organizations are scared to do anything outside of that. But
yeah.
I think there needs to be stronger legislation around it.
Got you. So just pulling on that thread a little bit, where would the legislation potentially end? Do you think it's good enough for an organization just to avoid harm? And I feel like you would agree that most
Yeah.
organizations should do that,
Yeah.
right? And that,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, that is already law, right? You know, it's part of the
Yeah.
health and safety law. It's just not necessarily enforced as well as it
Yeah.
should or could be. But you can't legislate necessarily about positive well-being interventions, can you?
I think the health and safety executive have got a lot to do in terms of the health and safety, the management standards and the cycle that come with it, because they obviously have the cycle, but where it misses is how do you actually do the cycle around work-related stress? So how do you identify it? Do you do it at an organization level? Do you do it at a team level? Do you do it at a department level?
Yeah.
It, as you said, it sits in legislation already, but organizations and seasoned health and safety professionals will go look at that guidance and they'll be like, I have no idea how to
Sure.
do this.
Mhm.
So I think not only do they need to make the legislation stronger around putting in wording around mental health, stress in the actual legislation, because I know that there is a certain area of health and safety that deny that mental health is all in it,
Mhm.
but also the guidance needs to be better on this is what you need to do to be legislatively compliant, but also this is how you can go beyond the legislation,
Mm.
not just so that they're ticking boxes. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot to be done there.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm going to sneak one last question in. You mentioned your diploma, did you call
Yes.
it
Yeah,
earlier?
yeah, yeah.
So, how do you feel about qualifications in this space? So, one of the things that's really interesting with the people that we get to speak to, spoken to all these well-being leaders, and one of the potential benefits of that is that people come from such a diverse
Yeah.
set of backgrounds. You know, we
Yeah.
get people who started in HR or occupational health, but then also personal trainers or nutritionists or accountants or
Yeah.
IT professionals. Is there a risk that by creating more, and I'm not saying your
No.
course does this, but by creating more agreed qualification routes, it might reduce the amount
The
of
variance.
diversity
Yeah.
that we have.
I think yes, the risk is always there
Mm,
with anything. I think the risk is lower than if we do nothing.
sure.
The fact that there are people or organizations going about putting on more just individual level interventions, but don't realize there's so much more, how much impact they can have, how impactful they can have to the business, not just the well-being of staff, is much higher. The risk of not educating them or them understanding. And a lot of the time, individuals realize themselves that there's more to it.
Mm.
And if there's no qualifications or training,
Yeah.
they don't know how to do it.
Mm.
So I think I don't necessarily agree that there needs to be a specific qualification that you need to get in, like as there
Got
is
you.
for health and safety or
Yeah.
clinical psychology, for
Yeah.
example. But I think there's opportunities there to really build upon how to educate the profession, because at the minute they do quite often feel alone. So
Yes.
one of the
Yes.
reasons that the level 5 diploma works so well is not only it gives them the knowledge base and the evidence, but also to learn from each other
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and getting to know each other across a cohort of that lasts a year.
Yeah.
So how shared learning as well.
Yeah. Lovely place to finish up. That word about community as we're here sat at the event. It's a nice place to finish. So thank you for
Absolutely.
your time today. Lovely speaking to
No,
you.
absolutely,
So it
Matt.
was quick. We're only doing micro podcasts today, so we'll have to do it again
Yeah,
in the
fantastic.
future at some point. Last thing I always ask my guests is give yourself a bit of a plug. So where can people find, obviously LinkedIn, right?
Yeah,
You know,
go to
just switch on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn to be everywhere to be seen. Where can they find you? Where can they find Super Wellness?
Yeah, Elliot Foster on LinkedIn. I've got a purple background around my head. Do connect with me there. Super Wellness, superwellness.co.uk. We run free events all the time. So if you just want to learn a bit more about workplace well-being, whole system approach, what the evidence says, do come, and kind of how do we really start to look at business performance from a driver of workplace well-being perspective. So yeah, LinkedIn and the website, really.
Perfect. Lovely to speak to you and enjoy the rest of the event.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me, Matt.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Working Wellbeings podcast, recorded live at Health and Wellbeing at Work 2026. For more great episodes, click the link on screen now.